Hi, I'm Eric Sabo, and today we're going to talk about gravity and the unified theory. I've been thinking about gravity and the unified theory for many years. I learned of the unified theory at Naval Nuclear Power School in Bainbridge, Maryland. So I've been thinking about it for over 40 years. It turns out the big problem with the unified theory is gravity. Nobody has ever had a clue to its cause. Newton did the math, Einstein improved on it, but never explained what caused gravity. He just said that a massive body distorts the space-time continuum, and nobody ever bothered to ask why. Why does the massive body distort space-time continuum? So over the Christmas holidays in 2005, I decided I was going to tackle the problem of the mechanism of gravity. I set out on a mission. I am the master of troubleshooting and repair of all mechanical and electrical systems. I thought that gravity is a mechanical system and it has to be electromagnetic because there's nothing else. So I set myself on the mission to discover the mechanism. After a few weeks, I came up with the concept on a website. I built the website and published it in early 2006. I scoured the internet to see if anybody else was working on gravity. Finally found David Toome, a professor in Belfast, Northern Ireland. David was a professor at Ireland's, well, MIT is the best description. David had been wrenching over this problem for years, I think. He viewed it as negative sinks combining somehow. He was a strict disciplinarian, and I had to be perfectly clear with my gravity model. David was working with the math on his negative sinks. He was very demanding. And it was a good thing because he basically forced me to come up with this two hydrogen atom drawing that shows how gravity would work on an atomic level. Here we have two hydrogen atoms. You can see how the positives repel and the negatives repel. But the positives and negatives attract at the same time. Attraction and repulsion are overlapping. The attraction overcomes the repulsion because the attractive forces work together. The difference between the greater attraction and lesser repulsion is the cause of gravity. I didn't realize it at the time, but it's also David Toome's negative sink, just from a different perspective. David was more about the math, so our correspondence came to an end. It was then that I found Walter Babin and his General Science Journal online. I thought I'd fly the website by Walter and get his opinion. Walter liked my idea of gravity being a residual. He also commented on all the other sections of my website, and at that point Walter became pretty instrumental in developing of the website. Walter made me realize that physics is in total disarray at this point, and what is accepted as Bible in the mainstream is open for debate. He introduced me to Henry Poincaré. That's when I decided that gravity is the dynamically chaotic residual of the incoherent magnetism of all the atoms contained in a body or system. It's that simple. Gravity is incoherent magnetism. Like laser light, magnetism is coherent. Like ordinary white light, gravity is incoherent. To understand gravity's mechanism, you have to imagine all the atoms in the earth are tiny, weak little magnets. Some are better than others, and they're not all pointed in the same direction. That's where the dynamical chaos comes in. It takes something the size of the earth for gravity to manifest itself. All the atoms in your body are the same as in the earth. Each individual atom in the earth is attracting and repelling each atom in your body at the same time. You're walking around. You have to admit, it feels like a big magnet. This individual action is why all things fall at the same rate in a vacuum. Gravity only sees individual atoms. It doesn't matter how many are in a falling object. Gravity is acting on each atom individually. Conventional thinking is protons, electrons in an atom cancel each other out and have no influence beyond the atom. But that's like saying if you stuck two magnets together, no other magnets will stick to them. Look at this table of four fundamental forces. We see the strong and weak forces which apply to the nucleus, the electromagnetic force and the gravitational force. Range is measured in femtometers, 10 to the minus 15th meter. The carrier for the electromagnetic is a photon. Carrier for the gravitational is a graviton, which is yet to be observed. We see both the electromagnetic and the gravitational force's range are infinite. That's because they're the same force. In fact, they're all the same force. But we're not going to talk about that right now. Bottom line, photons and waves exist for the electromagnetic, but there is most likely no such thing as a graviton, and sadly, probably not any neutrinos either. Fermi named neutrinos jokingly because they needed a way to explain loss of mass in muon decay. So they invented a neutrino and spent a ton of money looking for them. Jobs for physicists. Anyway, because the electromagnetic force's range is infinite, it is the law that the influence extends beyond the atom to all other atoms in the system, at least to some degree, and that it becomes cumulative. So gravity is electromagnetic, for the simple reason that there's nothing else. The difference between the greater attraction and lesser repulsion is the exact amount we feel is gravity. Watch this short demonstration using two little bar magnets. You have to imagine the two magnets as two hydrogen atoms. The white end is a positive proton, the black end is a negative electron. We see repulsion at first, but at the end of the day, they're always going to be stuck together. Atoms, of course, are spinning and locked in a structured setting, so it's not a perfect demonstration. But the demonstration is useful to point out the attractive overcomes the repulsive because they work together. It's like 2 against 1. Electrostatically charged spheres will behave in the exact same manner. I've observed it myself. The repulsive component is important. It's why things don't fall at the speed of light but accelerate at 32 feet per second squared. But that's only on Earth. The moon is 1/4 the size of the Earth and has 1/6 the gravity. Less atoms, less gravity. So gravity depends upon the mix of atoms in the planet or body. Take the moon. If it were made of lead, it would have a lot more gravity than if it were made of green cheese. Gravity is dependent upon the number of protons and electrons contained in the atoms that make up the body. That's why gravity readings vary across the globe. It depends what's under your feet when you're taking the readings at any location. Gravity is an electromagnetic beam between two bodies. Einstein's gravity described it as a well. It's not a well. It can appear to be a well. You can make math do whatever you want. Einstein was wrong. The emperor has no clothes. There's gravity beam between the Earth and the moon. The absolute proof of the Earth-Moon gravity beam is the ocean tides. There's a high tide on the side of the Earth facing the moon, but there's also a high tide on the opposite side of the Earth. And that is kind of curious, don't you think? That's because the Earth-Moon gravity beam cancels and decreases the Earth's gravity at a plane through the Earth, and the ocean waters attempting to float into space where the gravity has been decreased. I'd bet money the high tide on the side of the Earth away from the moon is a little less than that on the moon side. Picture is worth 1,000 words. You can see the actual gravitational shape of the Earth is compressed or slightly oval where the high tides are. Gravity is instantaneous. That's because the electromagnetic force range is infinite, and a gravity beam already exists between all the bodies in the system. It may be immeasurable for distant objects, but it still exists because the electromagnetic force range is infinite. The beam is there, it just gets stronger the closer any two objects become, making gravity appear instantaneous. You have your own personal gravity beam between yourself and the Earth. It moves with you as you're walking around, you get in your car, your car, they have a beam. All this leads us to come to the conclusion there's also zero gravity at the center of the Earth. Great pressure, but zero gravity. This is pretty much self-explanatory, I would think. So Einstein was wrong. Sometimes I think maybe the mathematicians have led us down a path that does not involve a scrap of common sense. I have gravity beam drawings on my website. Paul Schroeder has produced more detailed and eloquent work on that subject. Check Paul Schroeder out. I'm a product of a system that started with Enrico Fermi, Leo Szilard, Robert Oppenheimer, General Leslie Groves, Edward Teller, and Admiral Hyman Rickover. In other words, the Manhattan Project. Admiral Hyman Rickover is responsible for today's modern nuclear navy. His program would take guys like me and cram crash courses of nuclear physics, thermodynamics, electrical and mechanical engineering, and all other necessary knowledge to operate a nuclear reactor plant. It was 1 year of 12 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week. You had no time to think of anything else, just cram courses. Admiral Rickover demanded excellence and perfection in his program because that's what's required in safe nuclear power plant operation. Anyway, that's where I come from. So here's the bottom line. Gravity is simple. It's a cumulative attractive force overcoming the repelling force, and it's just basically that simple. It was right in front of us all along. We couldn't see the forest through the trees. I'm calling Occam's razor on this. So that apparently makes moi, Eric Szabo, the new era father of gravity. It's quite the title. I just thought I was going to write a great song. Sad truth is, no one could ever discover the true nature of gravity except someone like me, an outsider, because anybody else is working in an established mainstream university for a paycheck and nobody wants to jeopardize that. And then you always have to make the boss look good, so you know how that works. It turns out that there's really no one else with the total package of nuclear power knowledge and many years of applying that knowledge in practical application and observation. I set out on this mission in pursuit of a Nobel. Actually, the $1.5 million you don't have to pay income tax on. Necessity is the mother of invention. If anybody deserves a Nobel, it's Joe Nahas, greatest mathematician of our time. He wanted to work together with me on gravity, but being dynamically chaotic, I couldn't really see the point. If anybody could do it, though, it would be Joe. Here's his 50 solutions to correct conventional mainstream mathematics considered to be Bible. Here's the work of my friend Joe Nahas. Check this out. If anybody deserves a Nobel, I think it's Joe Nahas, greatest mathematician of our time. So what does it all come down to? If you want to talk math, you're going to have to talk to Joe. I'm all about cause and effect, trial and error. That's how any progress is made. Also, doing whatever it takes to get the job done. In the nuclear navy, it's imperative everybody knows how to do everybody else's job in case somebody gets hurt. And after getting out, I continued to operate in that manner. I always observe everything from a big picture perspective. So from that perspective, gravity is a simple, dynamically chaotic residual, and simple is good. Gravity is the cumulative attractive overcoming the cumulative repulsive. For the record, when they were building the first fission bomb at Los Alamos, the mathematicians were attempting to determine the critical mass of plutonium-239. They had blackboards full of calculations, and the closest they could get was a factor of 1,000. They finally had to just get some half spheres of plutonium and hold them apart with a screwdriver. And the screwdriver slipped, and well, you know the rest of that story. So I guess it's so much for the mathematicians at some point. Thank you for your time.